and sheriff in the city of Indianapolis, man. Caitlin Clark is helping them make millions upon millions of dollars, man. So this is trending on Twitter as of right now. It's being reported that Indiana Fever franchise value hits $560 million after Caitlin Clark boost. The value at $560 million is ahead of the 2026 season, up from $90 million in 2024, placing them the third behind the Valkyries and Liberty.
Caitlin Clark keeps pulling in enormous sums of money for the Indiana Fever, even as questions continue to swirl around whether the organization is being fully transparent with its fan base. There is a growing sentiment among observers that Stephanie White may not be the right person leading this team. From the preseason through last season and into now, the results have not matched the expectations of someone brought in as a top defensive mind. The team has been struggling badly on that end of the floor, particularly on the boards. How the rest of this season unfolds remains to be seen.
$90 million in 2024, placing them the third behind the Valkyries and Liberty. Clark drove merchandise sales up 60%, and she secured the 2025 All-Star Game and inspired a new $78 million practice facility that is scheduled to open next year in 2027. Now, for everybody who thought Caitlin Clark was not behind that practice facility, I'm here to tell you they single-handedly making this facility specifically for Caitlin Clark to keep her in Indy. Hell, it even has a golf simulator in it, man. They dropped some photos.
One area where White has made an adjustment is getting the ball into Clark's hands more frequently. But the honest read on that situation is that it is less a strategic choice and more a necessity because the financial picture surrounding Clark makes it very clear who holds the real power in Indianapolis. Clark is generating millions upon millions of dollars for this franchise, and the numbers back that up. Indiana Fever franchise value has climbed to $560 million heading into the 2026 season, a massive leap from just $90 million back in 2024. That figure places them third overall in the league, trailing only the Valkyries and the Liberty.
Are in it, man. They dropped some photos a couple weeks ago, and this thing is state-of-the-art, full all the way through. Now, Indiana Fever valuation soars over 500% since Caitlin Clark arrived, bro. They're looking like Willy Wonka right now. Herb Simon's wearing the top hat, I promise you. The Indiana Fever has turned into one of the most valuable teams in the WNBA since drafting Caitlin Clark, entering their third season in the WNBA. Clark and the Fever are the only.
Clark's presence drove merchandise revenue up 60%. Helped secure the 2025 All-Star Game for the city, and directly inspired the construction of a brand new $78 million practice facility set to open in 2027. Anyone wondering whether that facility was built with Clark in mind only needs to look at what's inside, including a golf simulator and what it represents, a deliberate effort to keep her in Indiana long-term. The photos released recently show something that is genuinely state-of-the-art from top to bottom. The Fever's valuation has surged over 500% since Clark was drafted, making them one of the most valuable franchises in the entire WNBA entering her third year with the team. Clark and the Fever are the only team in the league with all 44 games nationally televised this season.
Caitlin Clark entering their third season in the WNBA. Clark and the Fever are the only team in the league to have what? All 44 games nationally televised this season. They also will play 39 of the 44 games in NBA-sized arenas. Now, that is something that is going to stick out to me because I have to be honest. And I got to give you guys my honest opinion with this whole NBA arena thing, with them switching up these games. I think everybody is going to be very, very mad.
They are also scheduled to play 39 of those 44 games in NBA-sized arenas, and that particular detail raises a real concern. There is a strong likelihood those arenas are not going to sell out consistently. The engagement around women's basketball has noticeably shifted, and it has less to do with Clark specifically and more to do with the overall product being put on the floor. Having one elite player surrounded by others who look out of place does not make for a compelling broadcast. Some recent games have been genuinely difficult to watch, and that observation has nothing to do with any bias. It is just the reality when comparing the product to what fans are used to seeing in the NBA or NFL.
Up these games, I think everybody is going to be very, very mad when these arenas don't sell out. I I don't believe these NBA arenas is going to sell out. I hope I'm wrong, but there has been a shift in engagement, I should say, with women's basketball. And I don't think it has anything to do with Caitlin Clark. I think it has everything to do with the product on the court. You can't just have one player balling out and everybody else looking like.
Clark absolutely elevated the entertainment value of the league, but she also missed most of last season. She appeared in just 13 games due to a series of muscle injuries, including multiple groin strains and an ankle issue that came during her rehabilitation before the Fever eventually shut her down for the year. The honeymoon phase with WNBA content as a broader category appears to be over. The audience that remains is largely made up of committed Clark supporters. Other teams are not drawing the kind of viewership numbers they once had, and channels that built themselves around WNBA content have seen dramatic drops, some reporting declines as steep as 80% since early 2025.
Player balling out and everybody else looking like misfits. Because that's exactly what it looked like at times, bro. Like, I was watching the game yesterday and it was almost bad to watch. Now, granted, they was playing the Nigeria national team, but there has been games, I'm not going to say which teams I have watched, and it's just not entertaining. Coming from a guy that watched NBA, NFL, it's night and day, not the same. I think a lot of people could agree on that. Now, did Caitlin Clark help make it a hell of a?
In terms of raw valuation, the Fever sat at $335 million in 2025 and have nearly doubled that figure to reach $560 million in 2026. They ranked 6th in 2024, moved to 3rd in 2025, and held that position going into this year. On revenue specifically, the Fever came in 2nd across the league, trailing only the Valkyries, who brought in $52 million. Clark also ranked among the highest-paid female athletes of 2025, which is consistent with the level of commercial impact she has had on everything around her. Looking at the broader league picture, Sportico released its full 2026 WNBA franchise valuations, and the numbers are striking across the board.
Not the same. I think a lot of people could agree on that. Now, did Caitlin Clark help make it a hell of a lot more interesting to watch? Yes, she do. But she also didn't play a bunch of games last year. She only played 13 games. This year, she's balling out. But Stephanie White has to make sure she keep the ball in her hand. But with that being said, I still think that might not help the cause. I think the honeymoon phase is over with the Caitlin Clark fandom. I really do. You know, I just have to be honest. I think everybody that's here now is just diehard Caitlin Clark fans.
The Golden State Valkyries topped the list at $850 million, up from $500 million the prior year. The New York Liberty sit at $600 million. The Fever are 3rd at $560 million. The Seattle Storm are valued at $425 million, followed by $400 million, $300 million, and the Atlanta Dream at the bottom at $280 million. The league-wide average now stands at $427 million, a 59% jump year over year.
Now is just diehard Caitlin Clark fans. I shouldn't say the honeymoon phase is over with Caitlin Clark. I should say the honeymoon phase is over with the WNBA content. I really do. I don't think any other teams is going to generate viewership like they once had. Like, we see numbers that you guys don't see on our YouTube channels. My numbers has been down 80% since 2025, since the beginning of 2025. Like, there was a shift, 80% less views. Hell, I drop videos now.
To put that growth in context, 3 years ago, the average franchise value was just $96 million. It climbed to $269 million the following year and has now reached $427 million, a trajectory that no other sports league is currently matching at this rate. When compared to other major leagues, the WNBA is outpacing the NWSL, whose average sits at $184 million and is narrowing the gap toward MLS at $767 million. On the value-to-revenue ratio specifically, the WNBA is leading all major sports leagues at 13.6, just barely ahead of the NBA.
I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but her using Caitlin Clark as a screener in the pick and pop was ridiculous. But for Caitlin Clark, physically, this is the best Caitlin Clark's ever looked. It is the best she's ever looked. Yes, she got kind of pushed off a couple of times by Zaza James, who whose go-to move against the Fever was to run a straight line, shove somebody, stiff arm somebody, and get away, draw a defensive foul for some reason. But Caitlin Clark is
The 13 WNBA teams together generated roughly $47 million in total revenue, which averages out to about $31 million per team. The business side of the league is clearly gaining ground, and the driving force behind that growth traces back in large part to one player in Indianapolis. Caitlin Clark's preseason performances have been nothing short of remarkable. The conversation around her as an MVP candidate is very much justified, and she is not the only Indiana Fever player worth discussing in that context.
for some reason. But Caitlin Clark is not as strong as she was last year. Last year, Ryan Howard ran into her and just fell over. Like, she was not as strong as she was last year, but last year she was completely immobile. Even when she was quote-unquote healthy, she wasn't moving well. She is moving as well as I've ever seen Caitlin Clark move. Also, she is a lot stronger than her rookie year. There was a happy medium coming into this season, and that looks to be the shape that she's in this year. She is not a weak, she's not.
Aaliyah Boston has developed to a point where calling her the best player on the roster is no longer a stretch. In 2024, that argument would have seemed far-fetched. In 2025, with the kind of offseason Boston put together, the case becomes genuinely compelling. Her work as a screener using Clark in pick-and-pop situations was a standout
weak. She's not a weak guard. If she plays a forward, she's a weak forward. She is a mismatch if she gets caught in a big. And the defensive end, she is more active. She's more active off the ball. And like, this is a player that's never going to be a good defender. Like, she might be her projection is at her peak to be a bang average on-ball defender. I consider her a bang average.
From a physical standpoint, Clark is in the best shape of her professional career. There were a few moments where Zaza James, whose primary tactic against the Fever appeared to be running in a straight line and making contact, managed to push her off balance. Clark is not quite as physically powerful as she was the previous season, but that version of her was practically immobile even when considered healthy. Right now, she is moving better than at any other point in her career.
Consider her a bang average defender. I think she's a below average on-ball defender. I think her activity in getting in passing lanes is good. And I think when there's an actual scheme and system, as in refusing screens, certain types of defensive systems, she can be good in. And I think that's kind of what Breanne January is putting her into those positions. Against the Dallas Wings, it didn't really matter. If you know anything about Breanne January, her teams are always, they do certain things on screen.
She sits in a healthy middle ground between her rookie build and last season's version, strong enough to hold her ground as a guard, though still a mismatch if asked to operate as a forward against bigger players. Defensively, Clark is never going to be an elite stopper. Her ceiling on the ball is roughly average. Below average in isolation situations, but effective at disrupting passing lanes and staying active off the ball.
On screens. They are a really disciplined defensive team. Like, they're either going to refuse, go under, but like they kind of stick to principles like that. They never wing it. There's no wing it in Breanne January's defensive system. It's not Christy Sides. Whereas against the Dallas Wings, they winged it the entire game. So you have to take that into account, that they did just wing it. She looked poor on defense, as did every single player in the Indiana Fever, not named Raven Johnson. But the defense is...
The key is putting her in the right defensive scheme, one built around screen navigation and set principles rather than improvisation. Head coach Stephanie White has been placing her in those structured situations. Against the Dallas Wings, the Fever essentially had no defensive structure at all, which hurt every player on the floor except Raven Johnson. That context matters when evaluating Clark's defensive showing.
Player in the Indiana Fever, not named Raven Johnson. But the defense is... Look, especially with her offensive load, if Caitlin Clark can give you 4 out of 10 level defense, and people are like, oh, but she has targeted every possession. If she can get, it doesn't really matter about her being targeted. It's just about the total team scoring. If she can get to the stage where whoever offense on Caitlin generates less than 20 points a quarter, the Indiana Fever are going to win 80% of their games if teams stick to their guns. And
The offensive numbers from preseason were significant. Per 32 minutes, her average playing time from the previous season, Clark was putting up 28 points, 11 assists, and 5.5 rebounds. What often gets overlooked is the volume of open looks she generates for teammates. Even against the New York Liberty, when her shooting was off, she was consistently creating quality opportunities for others.
80% of their games, if teams stick to their guns and the whoever on Clayton. But I thought the shooting looks back. It looks back. She averaged per 32 minutes, which was her average last year in minutes. Per 32, she averaged 28 points, 11 assists, and 5.5 rebounds. Like, I don't think people realize when it comes to Caitlin Clark that the amount of open looks she generates, even against the New York Liberty.
One noticeable adjustment in the offense was the reduced reliance on Kelsey Mitchell isolation ball handling when Clark operates away from the ball. Instead, the sets have shifted toward running through the bigs, which suits Clark better since she does not project as a strong spot-up shooter or off-ball decoy. Elite off-ball movement is not something players develop in 1 or 2 seasons, and that remains a limitation. Where Clark is genuinely unmatched is in transition.
The amount of open looks she generates, even against the New York Liberty, she generated so many open looks. She didn't shoot well. She was okay. Her all-around game was good, was decent. She just didn't shoot well. She generates so much open looks. And one thing I really like with the Fever, and I'm going to talk about it breaking down the entire Indiana Fever team, is that they no longer stall after conceding a basket. They go back to they're doing what they did in 2024, where they can initiate transition from a conceded basket. Like, it's not, oh, we conceded, let's wait 2 or 3